There are spiritual agreements that are made long before we enter this physical life, sacred contracts between two souls who choose to meet in order to awaken one another. But what happens when one of these souls decides to break that contract on their own? What if she turns away completely from everything you both planned before birth? Perhaps you've found yourself here because you're experiencing exactly that. Maybe you're convinced you met your twin flame, felt that deep recognition beyond logic, lived a connection that seemed guided by the universe itself. And then she simply vanished. It wasn't just distance or fear. It was as if she erased from existence everything you had built together on a spiritual level. Here's what most people don't realize about broken soul contracts between twin flames. When this happens, it doesn't only alter your external circumstances. It changes the very structure of reality around you. Life begins to reorganize itself in ways that defy ordinary understanding. When a twin flame breaks this sacred agreement, 5 specific things start unfolding in your life. Watch until the end. The final one is so profound that it can completely shift how you understand destiny, free will, and your soul's purpose. And if you've reached this stage in your spiritual awakening, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, because what you're about to learn could forever change how you perceive soul connections. A soul contract isn't a romantic deal between two people, destined for a perfect love story. It's far deeper and more demanding. It's an agreement made before birth, a pact between two souls to meet in this lifetime and mutually trigger the processes of growth, awakening, and individuation. They essentially enter into a spiritual agreement, acting as mirrors for one another to awaken aspects of consciousness that can only be activated through this unique connection. Jung discovered, through his studies on synchronicity, that certain human connections operate beyond ordinary cause and effect laws. These interactions are governed by a principle where seemingly unrelated events are linked through meaning, not through direct causation. When twin flames meet and recognize the soul contract between them, they trigger a series of synchronicities that can fundamentally reshape their realities. But it's crucial to understand this. The bond between twin flames is eternal. It does not dissolve with time or human decisions because it is anchored in soul energy and the divine plan. Separation in this context is not failure. It is a catalyst for awakening, guiding the soul toward healing, surrender, and self-knowledge. Jung emphasized in the individuation process that life's most transformative experiences often come disguised as the greatest losses. A soul contract often includes conditions that, if you could read them before birth, might make you hesitate to sign. These include periods of intense separation, profound rejection, and seemingly inexplicable abandonment. All of these experiences are part of the original agreement. But what happens if one of the twin flames, midway through life, decides to resist this contract? What if they resist the growth process so strongly that they would rather break the spiritual agreement than continue evolving? Jung found that this is not only possible, but occurs more often than we realize. And when it happens, the consequences are far more severe than a typical breakup. Breaking a soul contract is not just abandoning another person. It is refusing your own evolutionary path. It is a denial of the plan your soul established before incarnation. And the universe does not overlook such a decision. Carl Jung experienced something similar when he ultimately parted ways with Freud. It wasn't merely the end of an intellectual collaboration. It was, as Jung later realized, the conclusion of a soul contract. Freud's role had been to guide him into the deeper mysteries of the human psyche, while Jung's purpose was to expand that understanding beyond the limitations of Freudian theory. When Freud rejected Jung's discoveries about spirituality and the collective unconscious, he effectively broke that soul agreement, and the consequences appeared immediately in both their lives. Jung entered what he later described as his confrontation with the unconscious, a profound inner journey where he nearly lost his sanity while exploring the deepest layers of his mind. Freud, in contrast, became increasingly rigid in his theories, refusing to move beyond the psychological framework he had created. One grew through crisis. The other resisted change. That's the defining difference between someone who honors a soul contract despite the pain and someone who abandons it to avoid discomfort. One transforms while the other solidifies. One expands consciousness while the other restricts it. One embraces evolutionary growth while the other turns away from it. When your twin flame breaks the soul contract between you, 5 distinct phenomena begin to manifest in your reality. Patterns Jung himself documented extensively. They reveal how the universe reacts when a spiritual agreement is violated by one side. The first of these is what Jung referred to as a state of archetypal orphanhood. This is far deeper than the emotional pain of a typical breakup. It feels as if a vital aspect of your cosmic identity has been severed. You don't merely feel like you've lost someone important. You feel as though you've lost a part of your very being. Something that existed long before you met. Jung believed that when two souls form a contract before incarnating, they become complementary aspects of a single spiritual whole, not other halves in a romantic sense, but carriers of specific elements of consciousness that can only be fully activated through mutual exchange. It's as though they are two keys that together unlock a unique doorway of reality. When one soul breaks that contract, you are left holding your key, but without the lock that gives it purpose. Within you remains immense potential awakened by the twin flame connection, yet it now lacks the channel to fully express itself. It's like having access to only half of a spiritual genetic code, complete in essence, but unable to reach its full expression without the other. This archetypal orphanhood shows up in very specific ways. You might wake up with a profound sense of emptiness that no activity can fill. You may feel as though your life isn't fully your own, as if you're playing a role in a play where the other lead actor walked off mid-performance. You know you have an important purpose in this world, yet you can't fully identify it, because its completion depended on the presence of another person. Archetypal orphanhood also appears as a constant cosmic nostalgia. It's not just longing for the person specifically, though that is part of it. It's yearning for a state of being you shared with them, a way of existing that felt more real, authentic, and aligned with your true self. It's like having briefly glimpsed paradise and now being forced to live aware of its existence but unable to access it. Jung noted that people experiencing archetypal orphanhood often develop a kind of painful clairvoyance. They begin to perceive with unusual clarity when others are living soul contracts, when relationships are superficial versus genuine, when authenticity is present versus pretense. Losing your own authentic connection seems to sharpen your ability to recognize truth and falseness in others. This heightened perception can be both a gift and a burden. On one hand, you gain rare wisdom about human relationships. On the other, it makes it hard to accept superficial or conventional connections. You've seen what deep intimacy and mutual recognition are possible, so anything less feels hollow, artificial, or inadequate. During this initial phase, it's common to question your own sanity. You may doubt whether the soul contract ever existed, whether it was all imagination, or whether you were simply romanticizing a connection that was ordinary. Jung warned that this doubt is part of the process. When something truly transcendent is lost, the rational mind tries to minimize the loss to make it more bearable. It's important to understand that archetypal orphanhood isn't pathological. It's a natural, healthy response to the violation of a fundamental spiritual agreement. Your soul is mourning not just the person's absence, but the interruption of an evolutionary plan that was established before incarnation. It's grief for a future that should have existed but was unilaterally cancelled. The second manifestation is even more bewildering. When this happens, you begin to experience what Carl Jung described as temporal interference, a disturbance in your personal timeline. It's as though breaking the soul contract creates fractures within the structure of your destiny, causing events that were once aligned to unfold in fragments or out of order. Jung deeply explored the concept of synchronicity, discovering that when two souls operate under an active spiritual contract, their lives move in precise, coordinated patterns. Seemingly random events align almost miraculously to create moments of meeting, growth, and mutual evolution. It's as if the universe itself collaborates to guide both souls toward the fulfillment of their shared purpose. But when one soul breaks that contract, the entire cosmic alignment begins to unravel. You might start noticing unusual coincidences that seem to pull you back toward the one who left, but always too late, always at the wrong time. It's as if the universe is still attempting to complete the original agreement. Yet without the other person's participation, its efforts become disjointed and sometimes painful. For instance, you might hear news about them just when you were finally moving on. You might unexpectedly meet mutual friends when your emotions had begun to settle. Or you might dream of them vividly, right after you believed you had released the bond. These are not signs that you should reunite. They're fragments of broken synchronicity still trying to express themselves. Even though the connection on the other side no longer exists, temporal interference also appears as a persistent feeling of being out of sync with your life's rhythm. You may sense that you're living ahead of or behind the timeline you were meant to follow. This occurs because the soul contract originally carried a specific sequence of growth and experiences. When that sequence is interrupted, your inner self continues operating by the old rhythm, but the external world no longer mirrors it. As a result, you may find yourself unconsciously preparing for moments that never arrive, or being caught off guard by changes that should have been predictable had the contract remained intact. It's like performing an intricate dance after your partner has left the stage. You continue moving through the steps, but now they feel incomplete because they were designed for two souls moving as one. Jung observed that these temporal interferences can continue for years after a soul contract is broken. It's as though the energy field surrounding your life needs time to fully reorganize itself to adapt to a new reality, one where the soul operates independently rather than in partnership. During this period of reorganization, you may encounter relationships or opportunities that resemble what was meant to be, but never feel quite right. This experience can be deeply disorienting, leading you to question your intuition, perception, and even your understanding of how life truly works. But there's nothing wrong with you. What you're experiencing is simply the energetic aftermath of an event that goes beyond ordinary cause and effect. It's often within these temporal disturbances that people begin to develop what Jung described as a transtemporal perspective, an awareness that time operates on multiple levels simultaneously. There's the chronological time of clocks and calendars, the psychological time shaped by emotions and memories, and the spiritual time governed by soul contracts and evolutionary purposes. Breaking a soul contract compels you to recognize how these different timelines interact, overlap, and sometimes conflict with one another. The third consequence is perhaps the most enigmatic and unsettling, what Jung called spectral perception of the absent soul. It's as if, even after consciously ending the contract, a fragment of the other person's energy remains linked to yours, a presence you can sense but can no longer reach. Jung studied projection and transference extensively, but he found that soul contracts create a distinct kind of psychic connection. When two souls make an agreement before incarnating, they intertwine elements of their energy fields. During earthly life, while the contract is active, this bond supports telepathic communication, synchronicity, and an immediate sense of mutual recognition. But when one soul ends the contract, the energetic connection doesn't completely disappear. It lingers, echoing like a faint signal from a once shared frequency. It evolves into what Jung described as a shared autonomous complex. This phenomenon, known as spectral perception, manifests in several puzzling ways. You might wake up with a distinct sense that she was present during the night, even though your rational mind insists that's impossible. You might feel her emotions as if they were your own, particularly during moments of crisis or important decisions in her life. You may suddenly gain insights about situations she's experiencing, receiving information through channels that seem to go beyond the 5 physical senses. This perception isn't mere imagination or wishful thinking. Jung recorded instances where people maintained remarkably precise psychic connections with former partners whose soul contracts had been broken. It's as though the part of her soul, once intertwined with yours, continues to transmit information, though now without the conscious involvement of her personality. You receive pieces of her inner experience, but they arrive fragmented and confusing, like echoes from another realm. The most unsettling aspect of this perception is sensing when she's actively trying to suppress or erase the bond between you. It feels as though you can perceive her deliberate effort to forget what you shared, to convince herself it wasn't significant, and to move on as if no spiritual contract ever existed. Feeling this denial is like witnessing a slow form of spiritual self-destruction. Jung understood that when a soul consciously severs a deep spiritual agreement, it must repress essential aspects of itself to sustain that choice. She must close off parts of her consciousness, dull her spiritual awareness, and persuade herself that transcendent connections are mere fantasies. Through spectral perception, you sense this dimming of her awareness in real time. This can become a constant source of emotional and spiritual pain. You find yourself observing the gradual impoverishment of someone you care for deeply, yet you are powerless to intervene. It's like watching a person methodically dismantle their ability to perceive the sacred, to recognize synchronicities, to sense deeper layers of existence. Spectral perception may also appear through recurring dreams, where you meet again in parallel dimensions, alternative realities, where the contract remained intact and you both continued to grow together. These dreams differ profoundly from ordinary ones. They possess a vividness and emotional depth that feels more like memory than imagination. They appear like glimpses into possibilities that once truly existed before the soul contract was broken, as if your soul still retains access to the original blueprint of the shared reality you were meant to create together. Carl Jung might describe these dreams as the collective unconscious, attempting to preserve the memory of that original plan, even after one person consciously abandoned it. It's almost as though there's a cosmic archive, a vast library where every soul contract is eternally stored, and even after the bond is broken, your soul still has reading access to the file, though it can no longer bring it into form. During this period, it's essential to understand that you're not losing touch with reality or holding on to delusions. What you're experiencing is a form of spectral perception, a genuine sensitivity that often emerges when deep soul connections are abruptly severed. You're perceiving energetic fragments of a reality that still exists on a subtle level, even after the physical or emotional separation. The key challenge here is learning how to live with this heightened perception, acknowledging it without letting it immobilize you or keep you trapped in the past. The fourth manifestation of contract breakage is both the most painful and the most liberating. It's what Jung referred to as a forced acceleration of individuation. When a twin flame breaks the soul contract, the universe doesn't simply halt your spiritual growth or cancel the evolution that was meant to occur through the partnership. Instead, it redirects that same growth inward, compelling you to evolve independently and much faster. Jung defined individuation as the process through which a person becomes psychologically whole, integrating both conscious and unconscious aspects of the self. Normally, this journey unfolds gradually over many years through experiences, relationships, challenges, and insights that slowly build inner maturity. But when a soul contract shatters, it's as if the universe declares, if you can't evolve together as planned, then you must evolve alone, and you must do it quickly. This forced individuation reveals itself through a series of overlapping crises, emotional, spiritual, and psychological, that would typically be spread across a lifetime, but now arrive all at once, urging you toward rapid growth and self-realization. You may find yourself simultaneously questioning your career, spirituality, core values, life choices, family dynamics, sexual identity, and even your existential purpose. It can feel as though every part of your personality that requires growth is being activated at once. This simultaneity can be overwhelming. Under normal circumstances, personal growth occurs incrementally. You address one issue at a time, allowing space to integrate each insight before moving on to the next challenge. But in forced acceleration, multiple transformations happen concurrently. It's like condensing several years of intensive therapy into just a few months. Observations show that people experiencing forced acceleration of individuation often report intense mystical or transpersonal experiences. The psychological pressure of so much simultaneous growth opens perceptual channels that typically remain closed. You might suddenly gain profound insights about the nature of reality, receive prophetic dreams, understand patterns guiding your life, or access knowledge beyond your personal experience. This expansion of awareness can be both exhilarating and frightening. On one hand, you're touching levels of wisdom and understanding most take a lifetime to achieve. On the other, you might feel disconnected from consensual reality, perceiving things that others around you cannot see or comprehend. Forced acceleration also commonly involves what Jung described as intensive shadow work. Aspects of yourself that were denied, repressed, or ignored suddenly become unavoidable. You're compelled to confront destructive patterns, unhealed wounds, defense mechanisms, and unconscious projections. It's like a bright light, illuminating all the hidden corners of your psyche simultaneously. This confrontation can be intensely painful. You may uncover traits you'd rather not acknowledge, recognize behaviors that harm others, and accept responsibilities you previously avoided. Yet Jung emphasized that this shadow work, though difficult, is crucial for developing an authentic and integrated personality. During forced acceleration, you may also experience enantiodromia, the transformation of a trait into its opposite. Long-standing personality characteristics may suddenly reverse. Someone usually highly controlled may become impulsive. Someone typically emotional may become coldly rational. A previously dependent individual may become almost incapable of intimacy. These reversals are not pathological. They are the psyche's way of seeking balance after the abrupt disruption of a fundamental life plan. It's as if the soul is experimenting with new ways of being, discovering who you are when no longer defined by external structures or partnerships. The most challenging aspect of forced acceleration is that much of this journey must be navigated alone. The person who was meant to stand beside you, supporting and sharing your growth, chose to end that agreement and walk away. As a result, you now have to cultivate inner resources that would normally evolve through mutual support. But here's what's remarkable. Individuals who experience this forced acceleration of individuation often emerge with extraordinary strength, wisdom, and authenticity rarely seen in others their age. They achieve a sense of inner completeness that usually comes only after many years of conscious living. It's as though they were compelled to mature spiritually. In Fast Forward, Carl Jung described this as a form of cosmic compensation for the broken contract. You lost the chance to grow through partnership as originally intended, but in return, you gained the opportunity to develop profound self-sufficiency and inner integrity, qualities you might never have reached if life had gone smoothly. You become whole not through balancing with another person, but by integrating every aspect of yourself. The fifth and most extraordinary result of this process is what Jung called the awakening of the oracular function. This is when you develop a kind of perception that transcends normal limits of time and space, allowing you to recognize patterns, connections, and potential future outcomes with striking accuracy that defies logical explanation. Jung studied many individuals who developed such intuitive or divinatory capacities following deep psychological trauma. He found that the breaking of a soul contract often serves as one of the most powerful triggers for this type of awakening. It's as if the pain of a violated spiritual agreement forces consciousness to expand into higher dimensions, places where these very agreements exist and can be directly perceived. This function doesn't appear as some dramatic supernatural ability. Rather, it manifests as extraordinary intuitive clarity about human behavior, hidden motives, and likely future developments. You begin to sense when people are operating within the bounds of genuine soul contracts versus when they're involved in surface-level relationships. You can often discern with surprising precision when someone is about to make a decision that will significantly alter their life path. This perception is especially heightened toward others who are, or soon will be, facing experiences similar to your own. It's as though you've developed a kind of spiritual antenna tuned to recognize souls navigating the intricate dynamics of spiritual agreements. Whether those agreements are being fulfilled, tested, or broken, you gain the ability to offer insights and guidance that feel as though they come from a source of wisdom far greater than your personal experience. The oracular function may also emerge through prophetic dreams that carry unusual clarity and accuracy. These aren't symbolic dreams needing interpretation. They're direct visions of potential future events, particularly those connected to others undergoing spiritual transformation. It's as if your consciousness has accessed a realm where time flows non-linearly and all possible futures coexist. Jung observed that people who develop this function often begin to attract others, standing at pivotal points in their spiritual journeys. They seem to emit a frequency that resonates with souls seeking guidance, clarity, or confirmation in their own transformative experiences. You may begin to notice that you're becoming a magnet for people experiencing twin flame connections, soul contracts, mystical awakenings, or even spiritual crises. This attraction is not accidental. Carl Jung recognized that when a soul undergoes a period of intense individuation, a rapid evolution of self, it develops a unique kind of wisdom, one that can only arise through first-hand experience of humanity's most difficult growth phases. Other souls moving through similar experiences unconsciously recognize that wisdom and are naturally drawn to it for guidance and affirmation. This oracular function also brings heightened awareness of karmic patterns influencing human relationships. You begin to sense when people are replaying old soul dynamics, fulfilling ancient agreements, or caught in recurring cycles that must be broken for growth to occur. It can feel as though you're seeing invisible layers of meaning behind what seems like ordinary life events. At first, this perception can feel unsettling, especially when you notice destructive or repetitive patterns in the lives of those you care about. But over time, you come to understand that each person must live through their own lessons. This understanding cultivates a deeper form of compassion, one that transcends the need to rescue or fix others, because you see that every soul follows its own path of evolution. Even when that path includes what appears to be unnecessary suffering, it serves a higher purpose. The oracular function often comes hand in hand with a kind of unconscious channeling ability. You may find yourself speaking words that seem to arise from a source deeper than your rational mind, offering insights that even surprise you. It's as though you become a temporary conduit for collective wisdom that extends far beyond personal knowledge. Understand that this development isn't a compensation for the loss of a twin flame or any deep connection. Rather, it's a natural expansion of consciousness, triggered by intense emotional and spiritual experiences. You didn't gain these abilities to replace what you lost. You awakened them because the depth of your experience opened perception channels that were always latent within you. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the oracular function is its direct awareness of how the soul-contract process truly works, an understanding that bridges the personal and the universal, revealing the deeper purpose behind every connection and experience. You may start to intuitively understand how soul contracts form, why they sometimes break, what spiritual consequences follow different choices, and how the universe compensates when original agreements can't be completed. It's like gaining access to a cosmic archive, a vast spiritual library where all these patterns are stored and understood. At first, this awareness can feel overwhelming because you begin to grasp both the magnitude of what was lost and the greatness of what was gained through that loss. You start to see that your individual experience is part of a larger evolution of human consciousness, where certain souls voluntarily explore the most difficult aspects of spiritual growth so they can later guide others through similar terrain. When you integrate these 5 expressions of soul contract dissolution, something extraordinary occurs. You realize the universe never abandoned you when your twin flame broke the agreement. It elevated you to a new level of spiritual awareness. You were being called to develop strength, understanding, and compassion that few ever need to cultivate because their paths are more conventional. As Carl Jung described, you became what he called a wounded healer, someone capable of helping others precisely because you've lived through the deepest wounds a soul can endure. Your pain was not wasted, it was transformed into wisdom. Your sense of abandonment was not rejection, it was initiation. Your loneliness was not punishment, it was preparation for a unique spiritual purpose that only those who have walked through the darkness can fulfill. Breaking the contract wasn't the end of your spiritual journey. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one that could only unfold through challenge and transformation. You didn't truly lose your twin flame. Instead, you discovered your capacity to become a complete flame within yourself, able to light the way for other souls, navigating their own periods of confusion and growth. Perhaps that was your true soul agreement all along, not to remain tied to one person forever, but to evolve into a being of light and wisdom, serving as a beacon for countless others who will face similar experiences. Maybe your twin flame didn't break the contract out of a lack of love, but because her soul recognized that you were strong enough to turn that breaking into the foundation of a greater spiritual mission. As Jung understood, some of humanity's greatest contributions to collective consciousness come from those who, through life's circumstances, are pushed to develop extraordinary inner strength and awareness. You didn't join this select group by choice. It happened out of necessity. But now that you've cultivated these abilities, they're yours to keep. Nothing that happens in the future can take them away from you. If what I've shared in this video resonates with your own experience, if you felt I was describing your personal journey, then there's something important I want to share that can help you deepen your transformation and fully integrate the new strengths you've developed. I've created 2 ebooks designed specifically for people navigating the most intense stages of spiritual growth. The first is called 21 Days of Transformation with Carl Jung. It's a practical guide that teaches you Jung's most powerful methods for turning psychological wounds into spiritual wisdom. Over the course of 21 days, you'll follow guided exercises to integrate your shadow, communicate with your unconscious, and most importantly, transform the pain of broken soul contracts into a source of empowerment and clarity. The second ebook is A Survival Manual for Difficult Days. Because even when you understand the deeper spiritual meaning behind your struggles, some days are still incredibly hard to face. This manual offers grounded psychological tools to help you through those tough moments, especially the ones when you start to doubt whether you'll ever be able to turn your pain into wisdom. You can find both links in the first pinned comment below this video. Now I'd like to know who among you truly understood the depth of what we discussed today. If you recognize that your experience has a higher spiritual purpose, that you were meant to develop these specific abilities so you can one day help others walking the same path, then write in the comments, "I accept my mission." Remember, only 3% of those who go through a soul contract break manage to transform it into integrated wisdom rather than lingering trauma. Not because it's impossible, but because most people stay trapped in victimhood instead of taking full responsibility for their own spiritual evolution. You've made it this far because your soul knows you're capable of being part of that 3%. Thank you for your courage to face and understand the most mysterious and challenging aspects of human experience. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring the deepest layers of the human psyche through the timeless wisdom of Carl Jung.